Today we learned about domain and range. In the last unit, we learned about relations. Relations were where we showed the relationship between x and y. And there were three different ways that we learned how to show this relationship. We can show it in coordinates, where the first number is the x and the second number is the y. We could then show this relationship in a table where the first letter is x and the second number, is y. So if we showed this same coordinate in a table, it would look like this. If we did this one, it would look like this. This one. If we took a coordinate or a table and we put the points on the graph, they would look like this. X goes here, Y goes here, and we use the graph to plot the points. So we start with the first one, it would be -2, -4. I start with X and I go to the left, -2 spots. I then go down because Y is -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of on the corner, hold on. This thing isn't letting me put it in the right spot. Okay, it's going to be right there. Then if I want to graph this one, I go to the left -1 and then go down 3 because Y is negative. For this one, I start at X. X is 0, so I don't go to the left or the right. And I go down 2. For this one, I start at +1, so I go to the right 1, and then I go down 1. And then for this one, I go to the right 2, and I don't go down at all. And I connect the points, and the relation looks like this. So these are the three ways we have learned how to translate from coordinates to the table to the graph, or we could really go in any order. They're all showing the same thing. So today we're learning a new name for X and Y. And it's called the domain and the range. Domain is just another word for X. And range is just another word for Y. Where have we seen other words for X and Y before? Remember when we learned that the X value is also known as the independent variable? And we learned that the Y value is also known as the dependent variable? Well, now these are just new terms. So if we were to find the domain and range of a set of points, we just go like this. X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, X, Y. So we label the coordinates, and then we see that domain is X and range is Y. So now I put all of the X's on the line. I have X here, X here, X here, X here. And I put all of the Y's on the line. I have 2 here, 8 here, 16 here, and 22 here. So this is how we identify the domain and the range. We can also find the domain and range in a table. In a table, X is always on the left, and we call that one the domain. On the right, we have Y, and we call that the range. Here we have the domain, and here we have the range. On a graph, the range is the Y value, and the domain is the X value. If we were to put that on a graph, it would look like this. X is the domain, Y is the range. Now here is a fourth way that we can show a relation. In this way, we call it a map. And we have the domain or the X, or the X on the, oh my gosh, why is this doing this? We have the domain and the X on the left, and the range or the Y is on the right. This kind of looks like a table, right? Yes. The only difference is, instead of having lines like this, we draw circles around the domain and the range. We then use arrows to show which domain corresponds to the range. So if we wanted to create a map from the coordinates below, first, I think it's easier if we put them in a table. So we have X and Y, 1 here, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5. Hold on. Okay. And then now we take those values and we draw the arrows. We then draw a circle around the domain and a circle around the range. And this is called a map. The next thing we learned was how to use inequalities or intervals to explain the range and the domain. So we know that the domain is the X. So if we're trying to explain the domain using intervals, we find where the X starts on the left, and we find where the X ends on the right. We then draw a line spanning the distance from where X starts to X ends. We then write the domain with the furthest left value as the lower limit. We use the greater than symbol. We put X in the middle because we're talking about domain. We put the greater than symbol, and we put the limit on the right here. So this explains that the domain goes from -3 to +3. Now, if you'll notice here on the graph, we have a hole here, and we have a hole here. The point does not go like this, right? So therefore, in our domain, we left a hole here, and we said is greater than. If we wanted to talk about the range, to explain the range, we would find where y is the greatest and where y is the smallest. We put the furthest y value down as the lower limit. We put a greater than sign. Y goes in the middle because we're talking about range. We put a greater than sign, and we put the largest y value of 4 right here. And that's how we would describe the range and the domain using intervals or inequalities. So to review, if we see a point like this and it's filled in, we want to include it in the domain or range. And we would use the greater than or equal to and less than or equal to symbols. If we see a hole like this and it's not filled in, we do not include that value in our domain or range. So we will use the greater than or less than symbols. Let's practice with these questions from the homework. Here, we need to identify the domain and the range of this graph. So let's start with the domain. Remember, we want to put a dot at the lowest x value and then put a dot at the highest x value.
So everybody from Haitian community has a G?
Then we connect this line
It's one. Even if you see the 7.
and we put this number as the smallest. We put x because we're talking about domain. We use greater than because we are not, oh, this thing is wrong. Including the number. Oops, I didn't do that. We put a less than symbol because we are not including this number. And this number, 0, goes here. So we say that the domain goes from -5 to 0. Now if we want to find the range, we want to put a dot at the lowest y value, and then we want to put a dot at the highest y value. We then use this lower number as the lowest value. We use less than because the symbol like this means do not include. If it was like this, it would mean that we include, and we use this, right? But it's like this, so we're going to use this one. And then we put this number as the higher limit. It's 4. So we say the range of this graph goes from -1 to 4. Okay? Let's do this example here. So they ask us to find the domain and the range of the graph. We want to find the domain. We put the dot that they use here, the dot that they use here, and we connect them. Okay? This number becomes the left. We have -1. We're talking about x, so x goes here. they tell us that there is not a point there, so we do not include it, and we use this type of symbol, right? Then they tell us that this one includes 1. So we use this symbol, and we say 1. So we say the domain of this graph is where x is greater than -1, and then less than or equal to +1. So we write it like this. Okay? If we want to do the range, we put a dot at the highest y value, and we put a dot at the lowest y value, and we connect them. Now here we have a point at this dot, so we will include it in the range. And then up here we have no dot, but then it's filled in with a dot. So we can include that one as well. So the range, this number becomes the lowest number. We have 3 is less than or equal to, because this is a filled in dot. Y, because we're talking about range, is less than or equal to, because this is a filled in dot, this number here, 5. So we're saying that the range of the graph goes from 3 to 5, including both numbers.